Okay.
Okay, we are live.
Great.
Sounds awesome. Thank you so
Good.
much for doing this.
Sure.
So we will get started. We are our last session of the day, bringing the world to Christ through social media platforms. We are here with Bob Waltz, and he is the director of the Utah County Young Single Adult and Married Student Social Media Ministry Pilot Project
That is correct.
for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And you have been involved in helping, I imagine thousands of youth, young single adults, share the gospel online. So I would love to start out by hearing how has that program gone? What have you learned? What has gone well? What hasn't? And a lot of people are interested to know and understand these best practices. So why don't we start with that?
Good. I'll just kind of give you a general. We started this 7 years ago, just after right around the time Elder Bednar gave that talk at BYU at the Marriott Center about using social media as a platform. And so we began experimenting. So I'm a professor at BYU. I teach in the School of Communications, and I teach classes in journalism and in social media. And so there's about a dozen or so people that work with me. This is not our job. This is our church calling. And so when we started out with this, we brought in people from business. We started exploring ways that businesses use social media. And so we tried a lot of different things. We tried using a product called Nuvi, and we tried using Twitter, and we tried hashtag My Mission Christmas, and we tried hashtag Read the Book of Mormon. And we put on a thing called the Social Media Expo Fireside. And so over a 5-year period, we probably tried 20 different things, and most of them did not work. And so the thing that we learned is that you cannot follow the traditional patterns that businesses use for social media. And so we brought in people from, social media marketing companies and people who are expert in sales using social media. And those things didn't work for missionary work. And so what we found is that the thing that works for us is kind of the opposite of what works for most businesses. And so I teach in the School of Communications. I have a lot of my advertising faculty friends who contributed with us. And we found that their theory, their strategy doesn't work. And so in advertising, you do things like you try to make a video go viral, or you try to get an influencer who will share your content with people. And we found that those strategies just don't work. And so what we found in reality is that Facebook's strongest asset is in developing and maintaining relationships. So we found that social media missionary and ministering work is about relationships. And so instead of creating one piece of content and trying to get 1 million people to watch it, we're trying to get 1 million people to connect with 30 people that they already know. And develop and strengthen the relationship. And so that's what we've come up with, is ways to do that. How do I use, and we focus mostly on Facebook and Instagram, because Facebook is the giant of social media programs. There's 2.5 billion people a month who sign into Facebook, and there's more than 1 billion a month who sign into Instagram, and they're connected. So we found Facebook to be a little better than Instagram in the area of relationship development. And so what we tell people to do, the church comes to us and they say, well, you have the young single adults. There's 57,000 young single adults living in Utah County. That's kind of amazing, isn't it? 40,000 returned missionaries. I mean, that's a lot. So they come and they say, well, will you have them share our video? Because see, they're looking at an advertising thing. They're creating a video and they want to see how many likes they can get or how many views they can get. But in reality, that doesn't do any good. That, we tested those things, and we had videos that became trending topics on Twitter and trending topics on Facebook, but it didn't result in any referrals or any missionary discussions. It just resulted in a lot of people, mostly members already of our church, looking at our videos. So it made us feel like we were doing something when we weren't really doing anything. And so missionary work, online and offline, is best done with relationships. So how do you first identify the existing relationships that you have? So if you're a return missionary, who are the people that you were teaching when you were on your mission? the average missionary teaches between 50 and 100 people that don't join the church. So they've already read the Book of Mormon. They might have been to church. They've had a spiritual experience, but for some reason they didn't join. So in sales, we call that retargeting. So if every missionary just goes back and retargets the people that they were teaching that didn't join the church, they can step right back into that relationship of missionary and investigator. I think we call them new friend now. And so they can begin to say, are you going to church? Are you reading the Book of Mormon? Are you, and they can go right back to where they were because that's the relationship that they had. Beyond that, where did you go to high school? Do you have a lot of high school friends that you can reconnect with, members and non-members, members of your own family that you can reconnect with? And so we find when people do that, Facebook has a really cool function on it that's called See First. So you can designate 30 people as a See First. That means whenever they post, it comes to the top of your news feed. And so you build a relationship with those people. You don't come on the first thing and say, hey, you want to join my church? Because then they feel like they're being recruited into a multi-level marketing company. They're not going to like that. So you have to build a relationship and wait for them to ask you a question. And once they've asked you a question, then you can answer it. Then it's normal and it's natural to answer the question. So I've got 30 people that are in my See First list. Some of them are my own family members who aren't members. Some of them are friends from my high school. Some of the people I worked with in my career, my profession. Some of them are in my own neighborhood. And so every day I go on Facebook and I do what we call look, like, love, and listen. So I look at their content and I just like their good content. And then love, leave unsolicited validation. I leave a comment that says, hey, that's great. It looks like a lot of fun. And then I post things that would be interesting to them based on their need. So if I see that one of my friends is unemployed, I'm going to find some information from Forbes magazine or somewhere and send them the best things you can do to rewrite your resume. And so I'm going to continually do things to strengthen the relationship. And then I'm going to post things that are just reflective of my life. So I'll give you a good example that I do all the time. I post things. I go to a temple wedding, and we go to a lot of those around here. We used to, when we used to have temples in our church. And so I post pictures of those, and I put what a beautiful day it was. So eventually, one of these people I've got a relationship will ask me, usually on Instant Messenger, well, what is the difference between a temple wedding and a non-temple wedding? That's what I need. So now they've given me permission to answer that. So now I'm going to send them church-branded content that reflects what the temple is for. There's a great videos the church has. But if I just sent that out on my Facebook page, my friends wouldn't, there's no context for that. And so, and another thing I do is I have a friend who will post something, at my age, who says, I'm really sad my mother passed away. And so I'll respond to them on Instant Messenger and I'll say, I'm so sorry. I know that was hard when my mom passed away. Here's a video that I watched that made me feel better about it. The church has got incredibly good videos on is there life after death or till we meet again. And 100% of the time they watch that and they respond back and they say, thank you. That did make me feel better, because they've never thought about the fact that there might be life after death. And so the concept is a ministering concept, that you minister to people that you already have relationships with, and you feed them material designed to get them to ask you a question. Once they've asked you a question, now you have permission to answer it and refer them to the full-time missionaries. And so we find that this is the most productive way as members that we have to engage with people and to move them to the point where they're ready to accept having the missionaries come without being unnatural, without offending them and scaring them away. So that's what we do. And as far as we have 30 stakes that are young single adult stakes, and then we've got another 20 stakes that are family stakes. So we're currently working with about 500 wards, and that ends up being about 100,000 people that we're trying to engage. It's a little bit like herding cats, because every semester we get a new group of people who come in and we have to go retrain everyone. And so, right now our method is just going around to every different ward and trying to engage them and get them to use social media as a tool. we've had a lot of successes. We can't really count the number of baptisms because the baptisms always occur somewhere else. You know, they're in Africa or they're in, in Europe or somewhere. We don't actually see the baptism, but it actually is. We found it to work.
Now, so how do you have it? How does the training work? Where who trains? Who's assigned for that? And you must have a lot of groups to go. I imagine. How many wards did you say you have to go train?
About 500.
Yeah. So how many trainers do you have to do that? Because that's a lot of wards.
Initially, 2 years ago when we did this, I got 60 trainers, and we would go out and do all the training among my little group of trainers. And we did. In that case, 2 years ago, we were only working with 300 wards, and we did 240 wards in 6 weeks. It's actually really fun because the trainers go out, and sometimes we do 3 and 4 wards a day. It's really fun.
And you do it at sacrament meeting, or do you do it at the Sunday school level, or how do you do this?
We do it during the second hour during Sunday school.
Okay.
And so that's what they would do they'd have a joint priesthood relief society meeting. And we would come in and do the training for the entire ward. And then we would come back and do a training just with ward mission leader and the ward missionaries.
Okay, so two trainings. Two
trainings. And one was to engage. Our objective is to get every member of the ward doing this. So we want to get 15 million members of the church, or how many we have, to go and find 30 people and minister to those 30 people with the objective of bringing them to a point where you can invite them to take the missionary discussions.
Would the training be once a year then, or you were doing it how many times a year for that ward?
We would do it for the BYU wards. We would do it at the very beginning of the fall semester, because what we found with the students is that if you don't catch them in, end of August, first part of September, they book up their schedules. And so by November, they've already got all of their homework and everything. And we're asking them to spend an hour a week doing this, and they don't have an hour a week. But if we get them in the end of August and September, then they'll say, okay, I'll give you an hour a week. And so we have more success. So that's why we do a big blitz during the first part of the semester. And then we come back again at, December 15th, I'm sure it's the same at BYU Idaho. Everybody leaves town and nobody does anything because they're doing finals and then they go home for Christmas. Then they come back the first week of January and we hit it really hard that semester. So we usually do the ward training in the fall semester, and we do the individual ward leader training in the winter semester. And we have to do that right in January because, by April, everybody leaves town.
And do you have how many people do you have training then to do?
Well, and so we've shifted it a little bit. The Area 70 that we worked with here said would not be sustainable to do it that way. And so we've shifted a little bit where we have the stake president call the trainers. Instead of me finding them, the stake presidents find 2 trainers in their stake that they call. Then we train their trainers, and then the trainers train all the wards in their stake. And so that worked well in some regard, except that out of the 30 stakes, only 15 of the stake presidents actually called the trainers. And so, that's just the problem that we deal with in the church. There's a lot of things to do. And sometimes if you're the stake president, this isn't the top priority. You're worrying about other things. And so we're hoping that this year that we're going to get a better participation rate, that we get all 30 of the stakes to join in and call the trainers. If they call the trainers, we'll train them. And the way that we train them is we have a Facebook page. It's called Social Media Ministering. It's a group page. And we have all our training materials there. And we have a video and slides that we show them. And it's really easy for them. They watch the video once and then they can go do the training. It's not brain surgery. It's really pretty simple stuff to do. So once they watch the training video, and then we also have a blog. It's called socialmediaministering.org. And if you go to that blog, we've got all the training materials there. So anybody can look at that and watch the videos within a half an hour, you're competent to go train, because it's not really hard to do. Most, especially young single adults, already know how to use Facebook, mostly as a toy, but now you're learning how to use it as a tool. And once you learn it as an administering tool, it's really easy to do this on a daily basis.
Oh, perfect. So you had to put training resources in place. The state, was it hard to get the stake presidents to align, or was it more of the area authorities and then it kind of went down?
At first it was really difficult, because we would go to the stake presidents and many of them questioned if we were legitimate or if we were some, they didn't know who we were. We were just this outside group. And so they were kind of reluctant to, some stakes, we convinced them, but a lot of the stakes, they were resistant to doing this. So we, two things happened that were significant. One, I got called in to meet with Elder Ballard. It was before he was the president of the Quorum of the 12, and explained the program to him. And so that's when we became an actual pilot program. And before that, we were just local missionaries, trying to do things. And they designated us as an official pilot program, which meant that we had some credibility. Now, when we went to the stake presidents, we could say this is endorsed by Elder Ballard, and we're a pilot program that we're testing these things out. The other thing is that we embraced in the field of communications what we call the theory of the diffusion of innovations theory. And under the diffusion of innovations, you have to, if you're taking a new idea and you're trying to infuse that idea into a new community, you have to identify the influencers, because people don't have trust in an outside organization. So you have to find people that they trust who then become your influencers. So we identified that the number one influencer on the Area 70 were the apostles, and the number one influencers of the stake presidents were the Area 70, and the influencers of the bishops were the stake presidents. So in the church, we call that priesthood line of authority, which is a great way to do it. And so once we embraced the priesthood line of authority, then we started having great success. For two reasons. One, because that's the way it's supposed to be run. And two, now you've got influencers. So if the 70 now tell the stake presidents, this is what we're going to do, at least half of the stakes said they were going to do it. And then if the stake presidents go to their 10 or 12 bishops and say, do this, the bishops are going to do it. If the bishops go to the ward and say, hey, we're doing this thing, the ward members will do it. Because the number one influencer on the ward is the bishop. And so once and that's just been the last year that we finally got that in place. Now, they have me come to the coordinating council and I meet with all of the stake presidents. And I think this year we'll probably get all 30 of them that will call the trainers. And so we're expecting a lot bigger success this year.
So it's how many years did you say again? 7 years in the production?
7 years since we've started this, and we've tried about 20 different things, and 3 or 4 of them have worked.
And when you started, did you? It wasn't a calling; it was just, I believe this is important.
Well, it started. I was in the stake presidency of one of the YSA stakes in Provo, and Elder Stephen Lund had a meeting with us, and he said, we want you to increase your missionary work. And so that's kind of hard for us here in Provo, if you're being honest, because, there's not that many non-members. And whenever we do this, we just end up beating them up. Somebody they don't know comes and gives them a Book of Mormon, and then they never see him again, and so it's not really effective. So we decided to start thinking outside the box. And so the biggest thing that we realized was that we have this really problem when it comes to missionary work, and it's called boundaries. And so, for example, we have 2 missions right here, and if you're in the Orem, Utah mission, you cannot go east of the Provo River, ever.
Yeah.
And if you're in the Provo mission, you can't go west of the Provo River, ever. So let's say that you're a missionary in Orem, and you're teaching a family in Orem, and Elder Holland is speaking at the Marriott Center. And they say, hey, we want to go to this thing. Will you go with us? The Orem missionaries can't even go to the Marriott Center with a family and investigator to see Elder Holland speak. And so what must they think? That somehow you can't go across the river. And so if you're serving in an Orem ward and the person who's attending lives in Provo, you can't teach them, even though they're going to your ward. And so we've got this whole boundary problem with authority and assignments. And so that's what we're trying to break. And so, they'll probably kick us out of the church for this. But the idea is, if you're going to use social media, you have to extend your boundaries. So the way we look at it is that our mission has 7.5 billion people in it, because we want to reach out to people all over the world and engage them and then refer them to their local missionaries. But if we were just trying to use social media just within the boundaries of Utah County, we'd never be able to do it. And so that's been one of the things that we've been fighting against. So at first, they were a little reluctant to let us try that. But then, because we're a pilot program, they've allowed us to try that. And so since I was in the stake presidency, we started working with the Missionary Training Center and the online missionaries. And we started testing out things. And we did a thing called the Social Media Expo. And we had 3,500 BYU students who came on a Monday night. We spent 3 hours doing stuff, and it was a complete failure. It did not result in one missionary discussion being taught. And so we learned early that activity can't be confused for accomplishment. Just because you're doing a lot of stuff doesn't mean that you're being successful. And so we had to retarget. And that's when we realized that a lot of the things, having people write a review of the Book of Mormon on Amazon, it's a waste of our time. Having people take a selfie of themselves standing in front of a giant Book of Mormon, it's a waste of our time, because it doesn't strengthen a relationship with someone that leads to them asking a question. It's just, if one of my friends that I have from Los Angeles sent me a picture of them standing next to a great big giant copy of the Quran, I wouldn't say, gee, what's that? I think, what a weird, person you are. And so we do too many things that are not natural and normal that we think are missionary work. We tried this whole thing where we got everybody to put a selfie of themselves holding the Book of Mormon. We had all, worldwide, it was the trending topic on Twitter and on Facebook, but it didn't result in one missionary discussion. It just resulted in a lot of other Mormons posting a picture of them holding the Book of Mormon. And so what we found is you have to be really careful that you don't do things that make you feel like you're doing missionary work, so that you just say, did you do your missionary work? Yes, I did. I posted a picture of myself standing next to a giant Book of Mormon. Okay, well, that's not effective. It's more effective if I reach out to someone that I already know and let them know that I care about them, and show them that I love them. And if that's as far as you ever go, that's fine. And eventually they're going to ask you a question, and then you can answer it. And so that's kind of how we got there.
How hard was it to teach them that? Because that's a big jump for a lot of people, from like, oh, let me share, to the harder part is let me talk to them.
Right. And so
let me befriend them and go through the whole cycle.
Right. And it actually goes pretty quickly. And it's actually kind of, for example, the return missionaries, they can reconnect with the people they were teaching, and they can be very direct. So they can reconnect with people they were teaching in the Philippines, and they can immediately say, hey, I'm back from the Philippines, and I'm living here, and they're speaking to them in Tagalog. And they say, hey, are you reading the Book of Mormon? Are you going to church? Because now you can be very direct, because that's the relationship that you had with them. And they'll forever know you as elder whatever or sister whatever, because that's the relationship that you had with them when you were there. And so that part is really direct. So the other part we found that most members like, because it's not awkward to just tell people you like them. I mean, Facebook is built with a function where you can just click on like. It's really easy. And then find content. If you go on YouTube and you type in service or love or make me cry or soldiers come home, you'll find a dozen videos that are not made by our church, but make people feel the light of Christ. Now, that's a different thing. The Holy Ghost is a testimony of Christ. The light of Christ is just good over evil. And people feel that. And so when you send videos to people like that and they like it, that tells you something. So if I find a really good, Baptist choir video that's singing a great, song, and I send it, or even an episode from what's that show called where they sing, American Idol, and it makes you cry because it's about service or love, and I send that to someone and I see they like it, that tells me something about them. That tells me that they like feeling the light of Christ. And so I'm going to go on Instant Messenger and I'm going to say, hey, I noticed that you like this. Here's another video that I found that you might like. So I might send them a dozen videos that are just good, goodness. And then I'm going to slip in on Easter, I'm going to slip in a video about Christ. Because I can get away with it on Easter and Christmas. 2 days a year, I can get away with sending that stuff. And so this last Easter, I sent about 300 people a video about Testimony of Christ, about the one the church made. It was great. And so I had dozens of my non-member friends respond to me and say, hey, thanks for sending that. Because they have they know that I send out videos that are, make you feel good videos. So how do I get my non-member friends to watch a video that testifies of Jesus Christ? Easter is the day, but you have to work up to that day. And Christmas. So right now I'm working towards Christmas. I send out every holiday. I send out videos every time I find one. I send out, feel-good videos. I look for them every day. And then on Easter and Christmas, I'm going to blast everybody either on text messaging or on Instant Messenger with these videos, because now it's coming to me personally. So my non-member friends on Christmas are going to get a video from me that's going, if they watch it, they're going to feel the Holy Ghost because it's a testimony of Christ, because it's Christmas. And so I found with the young single adults that when we go meet with them and we explain this, they have an immediate understanding that now you use Facebook for a purpose and not just as a toy. It's not just for me to say what a ham sandwich I had or, that I went on vacation. It's a way for me to listen to what other people's needs are and to show them that I love them through my actions. And then just wait for them to ask me a question, and then I have permission to answer that and refer them to the missionaries. So and I tell the young single adults, you might do this for 10 minutes a week. You might do it for 10 minutes a month. I don't care. But, I do it for probably an hour a day, every day, because I love doing it. It makes me feel good because I'm serving other people, and it's fun to find those kind of videos. And so the ones who pick this up and embrace it, now they have an actual purpose of using social media. It's not a waste of their time anymore. So my own wife, I was spending an hour a day on Facebook, and she was saying, you're addicted to Facebook. And so I showed her how to do this, and she probably spends an hour and a half a day now on Facebook. And she's reconnected with our high school friends and people she went to college with, and some are members and some are not members. But the relationship building is the important thing. And that's what we just have to remember. It's not sales, it's relationship. And there's a big difference in those two, the way you behave on those two things.
I love it. I appreciate the time today. We're coming up on the 30 minutes, and I think you taught us great principles of how to share the gospel, what works. You've done it at scale, and this is something that people can use as well as touch many people's lives. So I appreciate that. Thank you for coming on. I know we had technology challenges and time challenges, but this was completely worth the time, and I thank you so much for doing it.
Sure. It's my pleasure. You have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.